Where do I look? Right over here?
So you think this thing is gonna help catch this guy? Well, why are you doing it then?
If you want to do a documentary on the treatment of piglins, I could give you a lot. Oh, okay. Well, if you ever change your... Alright, no problem.
You don't happen to have a spare shirt for me to wear for the interview?
The Channel64 SMP has been an incredible fertile ground for creativity, bringing to life many incredible buildings, stories, artworks, and machines. But it has also seen the rise and fall of some very controversial characters. Come along with us as we analyze one of these individuals that blurred the line between heroism and villainy. The richest walrus to have set foot on this server, an individual simply known as Aubni. We will take a look at the life of this figure, examine every deed and every controversy to try and find an answer to a simple question. Is Aubni evil? Businessman, philanthropist, crook, walrus. All words that we have heard to describe this person. But things did not start this way.
Yeah, so Aubni didn't have a great start in this world. He arrived in Hodgepodge when it was just a small village, you know, your typical hamlet. If it wasn't for the fact that it was secretly controlled by witches.
Life was hard in Hodgepodge. You could barely walk outside without risking having a potion thrown at your head. But the citizens got tired of living in constant fear. Tension started rising, leading to anger, and then outright violence in the streets. It turned into an open revolt against the witches.
Oh no, it was not pretty. Potions and spells flying everywhere, and all we had were our fists and maybe a sword or two. But we thought if we were gonna die, might as well die fighting.
The citizens were ill-equipped, outnumbered, and had barely any fighting experience. But they had something that the witches did not. They were controlled by real players with adequate brains instead of stupid mob AI. They could strategize.
Yeah, we managed to trap them in a pen. They couldn't leave and they kept poisoning each other. So Aubni and I just ended up punching them to death and we won.
Did Arrington say I summoned the witches? Because I didn't. He didn't say that? Okay, good. Because I didn't.
The rebels, led by Aubni and Arrington, won and banished from the village the witches allegedly summoned by Lucy Tiger. Losses were innumerable. Rebuilding took time, effort, and resources. But still, this revolt brought forth a bright era for the village of Hodgepodge. One that would turn it into a hub of commerce and the capital of the entire continent of Earthwater. But before that could happen, Aubni would need to get his first job.
So I had a cave spider spawner at my base, and I needed a lot of string. So I basically hired Aubni to kill all the spiders for me and bring back all the string.
But for Aubni, this job was just a stepping stone towards something larger.
It was a little bit weird though, because he didn't ask for anything in return. I don't fully understand it until I reviewed some security footage. He was snooping around my library while I was away.
Hidden within Nidvriz's library was an altar that could imbue any tool with strange, mystical powers. In reality, Aubni had used a simple menial job to gain access to this altar and acquire relics with power beyond human comprehension. And he would use this newfound power, not for good, not for evil, but for money. Stowe is an historian who specializes in the early days of Earthwater. He has studied and analyzed the inception and expansion of Hodgepodge.
After the revolt, the village was bustling with visitors from all over the continent. But though the village itself was now safe, the roads were still very dangerous.
In that problem, Aubni saw a great opportunity. People were scared to have their most prized possessions stolen while traveling the continent, and in fear, there is always money to be made. This gave Aubni an idea for a great new product, something groundbreaking, yet extremely simple.
Omni came to me with this very complex idea. He wanted a contraption that would open a rift through the fabric of space and time. The goal was to give its user access to their own pocket dimension where they could store their valuables. I had to explain to him this was literally just an ender chest. It took a few tries, but in the end, I think he understood.
Armed with that precious knowledge, Aubni set out to get the materials he needed to craft those ender chests. He left to explore strange, dangerous lands where he could obtain all the necessary components himself. The precious relics he gained in Linktree library helped a lot, but this endeavor turned out to be far too dangerous for him. So he instead chose to hire some of the local population to do it for him. All it required of him was some gold, which he could easily obtain from the safety of Earthwater. This arrangement turned out to be extremely lucrative, and he quickly got all the materials he needed to fill his shop.
Many of the buildings have been abandoned during the time of witches. It's in one of those buildings that Aubni decided to open his ender chest shop. Being so run down, it was extremely cheap to buy and repair. It also gave him a home since at the time, the small apartment on the second floor was unoccupied. Watch your head. The staircase is a bit cramped. So this is it. This is Aubni's first home. Sometimes you get this feeling when you walk in a room or a building, like some very important things happened here. The legend says in this very room that Aubni first had idea for Ender Chest. This may or may not be true. I think it's true. I can imagine him sitting in this table right here, tinkering with ideas and coming up with designs. Very exciting.
The building was repaired. Production had started. Within a few days, Aubni was ready for the grand opening of his shop. But sadly, customers were not coming as expected. What he needed was to work on his business's image. He had to hire a specialist.
Aubni came to me because his shop needed help with branding. He asked for a logo and banner to help bring people in, so I came up with a design. I even had to go and find some new banner patterns that I didn't have yet, but I got him his Ender Chest logo within the delays we agreed on.
And with that, the store finally had its own identity. Hordes of customers came to get their Ender Chests. Business was booming, diamonds were piling up. To give back to his community, Aubni built a park right in front of his shop to commemorate the fight against the witches and the liberation of Hodgepodge. But as always, with success came new problems.
We agreed on a price of 20 diamonds for the banners, but he couldn't pay right away. He had invested all his money to open the shop, but he promised he would pay me in a week. But you know what? It's been months, and the self-proclaimed richest walrus on Earthwater still hasn't paid me. I've done the math, and at this point, he owes me over 300 diamonds.
Our organisation started receiving many complaints about the way piglins that worked for Aubni were treated, and we're talking some heavy stuff here. Underpaid overtime, dangerous work environments, lack of safety regulations, restricted opportunities for advancement. It was awful, and they were even feeding pork to him in the canteen. Atrocious.
So the first time Aubni got on my radar, I had been hired by those pig rights activists. They wanted me to check out some kind of violation, but I couldn't find anything. What I did find out, though, was way beyond what you could imagine. There was a conspiracy to commit the most heinous series of crimes this world has ever seen.
In other words, nothing really worth mentioning, just the typical drivel that we always hear about successful people. Business went on and diamonds kept piling up. But Aubni, it turns out, was not in the Ender Chest business or the diamond business. He was in the empire business. With his growing fortune, living in a cramped apartment above his shop was no longer suitable for a person of Aubni's standing. He needed a place where he could live peacefully, far away from the dangers of life with the plebs. He explored far and wide to find suitable land to settle, but nothing felt adequate for him. If I can't find land that suits my needs, then I shall make it myself, he told himself. He found an empty bay, the perfect place to build his new lands. At first he thought he could just build an artificial island or maybe even just a ship, but none of it felt good enough. Then he looked up and it all came together.
The second time Omni came to me, he needed a way to make blocks float in the air. I had to explain to him that most blocks already could. They would stay in place if you removed the block underneath. This one took him less time to understand, but still, that's some pretty basic knowledge.
With this new, groundbreaking method, Aubni set out to create his own piece of land. A beautiful island floating far above the sea and far above the worries of normal life. In this place, the elite would live safely amongst their own kind, free of fear, danger, and poor people. But that is when the real problems started to appear.
So, when do I get paid for this?